I flipped over 3 times. I was in ICU for 4 days, 24-hour care for 28 days, transitional living center for brain injured adults for 6 weeks, disability class. I mean, it probably took me 2 years to recover fully. Tim's thinking about Tim. When Tim's in pain, Tim's thinking about Tim. Tim needs to get out of himself and think about someone else and be of service and help another person.
He has this saying, he says, when you get sober, you only have to change one thing. That's everything.
I love that.
Hey, what's up, masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. And today we have a really special treat. And this one means a lot to me as well, because it's something that's really, really passionate to me. Our friend Tim Westbrook is here today. What's going on, Tim?
Hey, David. How are you this morning?
Man, fantastic, my friend. It's not really morning where I am, but I'm still fantastic because I know
it's
you're
kind
out
of morning here. I mean, I've been up since 4 a.m. I mean, we have to get up that early because it's summer in Arizona, and that's the only way to actually get outside. And enjoy it for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I was just up there a few weeks ago. It's pretty bad. 107. I was like, what is this? And I think that was at like 10 a.m. Yeah. So, all right, awesome. Well, you are the founder of Camelback Recovery, also the I Love Being Sober podcast, and you have the Kick-Ass Sober Life. That is your social media? And
it's a social media platform. So we have a TikTok channel, we have an Instagram page. Those are the two that we're still launching it, but I think it's going to be a great page, which is just living a kick-ass sober life. And all the things that we get to do as a result of being clean and sober, and the sober activities. Because before I got clean and sober, everything revolved around drinking and doing drugs. And I couldn't even imagine living life without alcohol and drugs. So that's the purpose of the page.
I love it. And obviously, my listeners know I've been sober over 18 years now, and I'm blessed, and I do get to live a kick-ass sober life because of it. And so this, like I said, this means a lot to me. This is super cool. I'm excited to share. And for people that are listening, maybe you don't have an issue with alcohol or drugs, but it's more than that, right? Because it's addiction to a lot of different things, right? Is that what you guys focus on as well? Not just drugs and alcohol, but addiction to...
Yeah, it's not just drugs and alcohol. I mean, people are addicted to a lot of things: alcohol, drugs, pornography, there's sex addiction, gambling, food addiction, eating disorders. Like, there's so many. It's like the addiction is the solution to the pain. Whenever someone feels irritable, restless, and discontent, they can reach for a drink, a drug, Facebook, TikTok, anything they can do excessively that's going to take their mind away from how they're feeling at that moment in time. And when it starts to become a problem, that's when they come and see us, or they look into potentially getting clean and sober. And there's also people that are suffering from depression, anxiety. There's other things as well, which, as you know, many times leads to alcohol and drugs.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you for me, and I'm not going to make this all about me, but I drank and drugs so I didn't have to deal with all the things that I had going on the inside that made me feel bad and it made me feel less than. So, and when I drank, I didn't deal with that, but then it was always there anyway the next day. And a lot of times it was more there, like arrests and court cases and stupid shit that happened. So, so I'm guessing you can relate, and I'm guessing there's other people. And if you can relate to this, then hey, listen, this is for you. I hope it is. If it's for some reason not for you, then please share it with someone that you think it may benefit, right? So let me tell you a little bit about Tim, though. Tim is in the business of helping people recover from substance use disorders and process addictions. Tim was born and raised in Southern California, spent his teen years in Oxnard, California. He attended the University of California. Davis, where he obtained his Bachelor's of Science in Business. Most of his post-college years were spent in San Francisco Bay until he moved to Arizona in 2006. Struggles with substance addiction eventually began to affect every area of his life. By March 2011, Tim hit bottom and became willing to go to any lengths to get and stay sober. Through his journey out of addiction and in recovery, Tim brings experience, strength, and hope to the man who wants lifelong sobriety. His passion for health and fitness, long-term sobriety, and changing lives is not only what inspired him to open Camelback Recovery, but accounts for Camelback's high success rate. That's awesome. Today, Tim has helped board positions for several nonprofit. He actively works a 12-step program, and he is well-connected in the recovery community. He is also an Ironman, avid yogi, and in the interest of furthering his education and becoming a better tool for Camelback Recovery, he obtained his Master's of Science in Addiction Counseling at Grand Canyon University in 2016. His recovery has led him to living a happy, sober, useful, and whole life in sobriety. Thanks, Tim. That's cool. That's good stuff, man.
Yeah. Thanks, David.
Yeah. So, let's see. Where do we want to start this conversation? So, first off, how did you know? Like, let's start here. How did you know? Like, what was it that made you decide? Okay, I need to stop. I need to get sober. I need to make a change. How did you know that?
Well, I always knew that I had that I was an alcoholic, and I drank to blackout. I mean, even at a very young age. I started drinking probably when I was like 13. I mean, I can remember one of the first times I drank. A friend and I went and got someone to buy us a 1.75 liter bottle of vodka, and we played quarters with it. And I woke up to my dad, rubbing my forehead. So that was my first blackout, and I was a blackout drinker. And
did you love it though?
What was that?
I remember, because you remind me of my first drink. It was like just a nightmare, blacked out, and I loved it. I was like, oh my God, I can't do that again.
Yeah. And that was kind of the start. I mean, that was how it went. I mean, I drank to blackout. I loved it. I loved to drink. I had a lot of fun drinking and having fun and partying. And I didn't remember what happened the night after, and I didn't really care. I was, it's like if I didn't remember, I would remember parts of what happened. And my behavior, I was just so out of control. And talk about lying, cheating, and stealing, right? That was the essence of who I was even from a very young age. But I was still a smart kid. I still got good grades. I still, I was an athlete. I was a tailback on the football team. I was smart. I went to school at UC Davis. It's like I had lots of different groups of friends. I could fit in anywhere. And there were several things that happened. I would say several bottoms, right, that I had. And I knew there were a couple of times when I was like, man, I knew I probably should quit my drinking and quit my doing drugs, because it was progressively getting worse. I got into a major car accident when I was 19 years old. I flipped over 3 times. I was in ICU for 4 days, 24-hour care for 28 days, transitional living center for brain injured adults for 6 weeks, disability class. I mean, it probably took me 2 years to recover fully from my traumatic brain injury. And so it was a big deal. And one would think that maybe that was the end, but that wasn't my bottom. I remember people saying, "Oh, Tim, God is the reason." And I was like, give me a break. You know what? Yeah. Like at the time, I was pretty much went through a period of time where I became an atheist and I didn't believe. And so there was that. There were several other things that happened. I got fired from a couple of jobs. I got fired from a job where I was one of the owners. I owned 30%, and the other owners asked me to step down. And but finally, when I got sober was when my now ex-wife, she left me. She basically said, "I'm leaving you. And the only way I'll consider taking you back is if you never drink again and you go to rehab and you stop playing golf. And so I was,
And you said, see ya. No, I'm just kidding.
I said, okay, well, I don't think I need to go to rehab. I'll go to AA, which at the time I owned a business. I worked 50 hours a week. I had a purpose. I had stuff going on. So I didn't think that I needed to go to rehab. And I said, I'll stop. And the golf thing, I didn't really understand, but whatever. So
that's what threw me off, man. When I heard to stop playing golf, I'm like, hold on, that's a deal.
I don't know. I don't really know what that.
Yeah.
What the
maybe you played a lot of golf, you just didn't realize it.
I don't know. I don't think I played a lot of golf. I played enough golf to like stay, to get out of the house and be gone and be able to drink all day, I guess. I don't know. So that was kind of what led me to my very first AA meeting. That was the first AA meeting I had ever gone to in my life. And I remember it was March 8th, 2011. And I pulled up in the parking lot. It was a men's meeting. It was a birthday cake meeting. I pulled up to the parking lot and there were a bunch of guys all out in front. They were all laughing and having a good time. And I'm sitting there in my car and I'm crying and I'm like looking at these guys and I'm like, why are they so happy? I don't understand it. And so I went up and I went in the room and I sat down and, that was the first time I'd ever said, my name's Tim, I'm alcoholic. Cause they say, anybody with their first 30 days, tell us who you are. And then I sat down next to a guy named Michael. And at that meeting, it's a podium meeting, and they call newcomers up to the front. So they called me up to the front. There were probably 30 guys at the meeting. And I remember going to the front of the room and telling my story of what happened, because there were some shenanigans that happened over the weekend. And that was like that was it for my wife, or for my ex-wife. That was when she finally said, okay, this is it. And which, we know that wasn't the first time, but that was it. And so I told the story of what happened and everybody, they all laughed. They laughed their asses off. I cried. They laughed. I cried. They laughed. And they said, keep coming back.
Yeah. And
they said, get a sponsor, go to a meeting every day for the next 90 days, work the steps. And that's what I did. That's what I did. That's how I started my journey.
Well, and the reason that they laughed is because it was so relatable. And I think that's one of the benefits of being able to go to these meetings. And we start to build that network of people, because I think that's why meetings are so effective. Because there's the community and and you're relating to these people on that. Like they can understand, like if you went into a normal room of people and started telling them about all the things you did the night before, you'd be done. Everybody's gonna, right? They're gonna be like, what are you crazy, dude? Like get out of here.
Yeah.
Not doing business with you anymore. You're this, you're that. You go to an AA meeting, you share that, everybody can relate to you.
Yep.
Right. I think that's one of the gifts, Let me ask you this. So think about, you said this, you said, you mentioned a few of the things you went through and you said one would think that I'd be done after all that, crashing your cars, the things with all the other examples you shared. When you say why aren't we done though? When you say one would think you'd be done, for people listening, because I'm guessing there's a lot of other people, because I know me, for years and years, I feel like this is my last time drinking. I'm done. I'm not going to drink anymore. And then invariably, a couple weeks later, for whatever reason, I'd say, I'll just have a drink tonight. Right? Why don't people stop? Like, why? You should, but what is it?
I never really tried to stop. I just wasn't ready, and I look at the things that have happened in my life. I mean, my life fell apart multiple times. And so from an outsider, someone that's not an alcoholic, you would think, how could this not be a big enough wake-up call for him to stop drinking and stop doing drugs? And I see it, especially working in the business I'm in. I see people and they're like, we actually had a kid who he was 21 years old. he smashed his face in. So really, really good looking kid. And, he had a big scar, up and down his face and his nose. And he like broke all of the bones in his face and everything. And then he was in one of my homes and he was clean and sober. And then next thing you know, he buys a motorcycle and he gets into a motorcycle accident and now he's dead.
Whew, yeah.
And it's so sad. I've seen it multiple times where people stay with us and it's like, gosh, how could this person keep on going? And then they move out because they don't need us, because they've got this, because they're going to continue doing what they're doing. And then a few months later or 6 months later or a year later, they're dead. Young people. And that was me. I feel so blessed and lucky to still be alive. And now I've dedicated my life to helping others and working in this space. And it's just because there's no way I would be alive. There's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way I would be alive. And I just, my bottom, the bottom that got me sober, I don't think was my lowest bottom. I had lots of other bottoms.
You were just ready.
I was just ready. So, and I'm sure you've seen this too. There's no way to know whether or not somebody's going to get it because you don't know. Like when I went to my first meeting, like when I celebrated 5 years, there were a bunch of people that said, "Congratulations, you're no longer a newcomer." I bet that you wouldn't be back the next week. Like after hearing me my very first share of my very first meeting, and I stuck around. So you just don't know who's going to stick around and who's not going to stick around. Yeah.
Well, it's a one day at a time program, regardless of what you're dealing with. I know for me, it was drugs, alcohol, which led to drugs, and I can be obsessive with other things. Exercise can be an obsession for me, right? I was doing CrossFit for years. I'd be at the gym. I would stay at the CrossFit gym pretty much all day, even if I wasn't doing a WOD, because I was addicted to it and became my community. So I got to watch out for all that stuff. Well, first off, why is this important to you? Like why is this mission so important to you, Tim Westbrook?
It's just helping other people recover. It's so we all, it's like what I want out of life is I want to be fulfilled. I want fulfillment, and helping other people find recovery is fulfilling. And seeing people that stay with me and then they leave, and then in a year or 2 years or 5 years later, I've been open long enough. Camelback Recovery has been open long enough to where I've seen people, they're broken when they come to us, and now they're married, they have kids, they own houses, they have careers, their lives have completely turned around. And that's amazing. That's amazing for me to see. And it fills my heart, and it just makes me feel like what I'm doing is worthwhile. And the businesses that I've worked in the past haven't been fulfilling. I mean, I've enjoyed them. They've been fun, but there's no like real fulfillment. This is real fulfillment where I get to help other people. And as well as I know, it's being of service. How am I going to help myself? I'm going to help myself by helping other people. When I start feeling pain, I know that I'm being selfish. I know that Tim's thinking about Tim. When Tim's in pain, Tim's thinking about Tim. Tim needs to get out of himself and think about someone else and be of service and help another person. And if I help another person, I'm not thinking about myself. I'm not thinking about my problems. And my problems are never that big of a deal.
Amen. Yeah. No, you're absolutely. And that's how you keep it. We have to give it away to keep it. You guys asked me to come speak to a group last Friday, and didn't even have to think. My sponsor taught me, when someone asks you to speak, you just say yes. That's
Absolutely.
it. I mean, if you can do it, if you can't do it, you can't. Right? Obviously, sometimes there's a conflict, but if there's no conflict, you just say yes. If someone asks you to chair a meeting, you say yes. I want to switch gears in a minute and talk about your podcast as well as what else you have going on. But what would you say for people that are listening so far, and let's say someone's connecting or resonating with a little bit of your story or what we're talking about, or maybe it's in another area like we talked about. Maybe it's addiction of gambling or eating. What would you say is the first step for that person? What would be the next step?
Well, let's see here. Well, as we know, the first step is I'm powerless, and it's you have to get help. You have to get help. And for me, I went to an AA meeting and I started taking suggestions. I listened to other people. So knowing that my best thinking got me where I was. And that's one of the biggest things that I share with people that are in our homes, newcomers, is take suggestions. Like, be willing to take suggestions because your best thinking got you where you are today. Yeah. And if you're willing to take suggestions, you got to listen to somebody besides yourself. And even today, I'm sober over 10 years. Tim needs to listen to somebody besides Tim. Because if Tim is talking to Tim can rationalize anything. And I can make anything sound good, and I can make anything work in my own mind. I know that I need to listen to somebody else, even though many times I know the right answers. I still got to listen to somebody else. So it's taking suggestions, taking action, and go to a meeting, go to therapy, go to treatment.
There's a gentleman I know. He's been sober a lot of years, over 30, and he has this saying. He says, when you get sober, you only have to change one thing. That's everything.
I love that. I love that.
So it's true. I mean, it really, you have to change the people you're with. You have to change the places you go. You have to change what you do. You have to change your routines. I mean, it's life. You really have to change your life. It's not like you can just say, well, I'm going to go check out a meeting once a week and it's going to work. Cause it unfortunately, I mean, it could, I guess, for someone, but for, you and I are having this conversation, but we both realize that the majority of the people don't get this. The amount of people that get it is very small. I forget the number, but it's like what, 10, 15%?
Less than 10%. Oh yeah. It's way less than 10%. Most people don't get it. And you're right. It's many people, they want to pick and choose which, what they're going to do, what they're not going to do. They're like, okay, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah. And, I'm going to keep these friends because I like these friends. I'm going to continue going to this place. I'm going to continue going to this bar, or I'm going to continue going to whatever, football games. I mean, if you go to football games and you have season tickets and you get smashed every single time you go, you're probably going to have to take a break from that for a while.
Sure.
Like, that's, for me, everything has to change. New eating habits, new sleeping habits, new exercise habits. You pray and meditate. You learn to listen to other people. You learn to be of service, new hobbies, new interests. Like, everything has to change in order to start living a new life, because we're programmed to live life a certain way. And that old way of living got you to treatment. So just to remove the drinking and the drugs, that's not a way to stay clean and sober.
I mean, because the reality is, if you remove it, then there's a void there that has to be filled with something else. And we fill it with God. We fill it with the meetings. We fill it with other people in recovery. At least that's what I did in the beginning. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was doing everything. I was going to NASCAR with guys. We were going out Friday nights to dinner, smoking cigars. I mean, that was the camaraderie, right? Like, that was part of it, especially. And now I have a family. Life's different now, but in the beginning, that would consume my life. Every hour I was up, there was something, with the exception of working, it had something to do with being in sobriety.
I would agree with, I can relate to that. It was the same for me. and I still worked. I still had a job, but I went to meetings, and it wasn't all just going to meetings. And I think that's one of the things that people miss. It doesn't mean that you're just going to meetings. What it meant for me is that I'm going to meetings. You know, I show up to the meeting early. So the meeting before the meeting after the meeting, I'm sponsoring guys, but I'm also going to breakfast after the meeting. I'm playing golf with guys in recovery. I'm going out to dinner with people in recovery. I'm going bowling with people in recovery. Like I'm totally plugged in, and I'm hanging out with people in recovery that are doing sober things, sober activities. I started doing yoga, and that's a sober activity. So there's things you can do that are plugged into recovery, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the only thing you're doing, you don't need to go to 3 meetings a day. Like I think that's counterproductive, because we have to learn how to live life outside of going to meetings, but we do need to continue going to meetings.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about your podcast now. Let's switch gears. I Love Being Sober podcast. Tell us about that.
So I Love Being Sober, which is a spinoff of our good friend, Joe Polish, founder of Genius Network and Genius Recovery. It's a spinoff of I Love Marketing. I love being sober. I love being sober. I really do love being sober. So I thought that was a fitting name for a podcast, was I Love Being Sober. And it's not just about being sober. It's also about health and wellness. And so I have guests on the show, and I'm about to launch a new series, which will be secrets to avoid a relapse and mistakes to avoid a relapse. So I'm gonna start on that. But right now I've been doing interviews. It's people that are in recovery, people that work in treatment, people that don't work in treatment, interventionists. You're gonna be a guest on my show. Joe Polish has been a guest on my show. BJ Fogg, who wrote Tiny Habits, and at Tiny Habits, which is the Amazon 2020 best-selling book of the year. I didn't know that. Best-selling business book. Wow. So he was on my show, and we talked about habits as they relate to addiction. Tiny habits as they relate to addiction. Dr. Ramani Durvasula, who is an expert in narcissism. So we talked about narcissism and addiction. So I've had some really amazing guests on the show, and we've talked about many different things, more than just not drinking and doing drugs. It's new lifestyle habits and things that complement recovery. Yeah. Amen. So as far as you mentioned a few mistakes or secrets, and kind of starting to wrap up, for people that are listening, and maybe they are, and what would you say is one of the most, I'll tell you, for me, I think, as I've been sober for, like I said, over 18 years now, I've worked with a lot of newcomers, and I think the biggest mistake I see is the first step. So the first step is admitting powerlessness. And when you admit powerlessness, you're willing to do whatever it takes. That was something my sponsor, Franny, asked me in the beginning. He asked me, "Are you willing to do whatever it takes?" And I said, "Absolutely." He said, and he asked me again, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, then you're going to get on your knees and you're going to humble yourself. Right? And you're going to keep doing that. And you're going to go to this meeting, you're going to go to this meeting, and you're going to show up in the retreats." I didn't question that. And I think one of the things I see is, for a lot of new guys, they say they want to get sober, but they're not even willing to get on their knees. They're not willing to humble themselves, do some of those things that, and regardless if you think it works or not, I can tell you, the people I hang out with, it works, but I think what I'm trying to get at, Tim, is the first step is the act of humbling yourself and saying, okay, you know what? I give up. I'm willing to just get on my knees, not because you even believe in anything else, but because I give up. I believe that something else is going to help me. Right. And I think that's what I see as probably one of the biggest challenges. People refuse to accept that it's beyond their control. The help is beyond their control. Powerlessness. It's powerlessness. It's just, you're right. It's powerlessness. It's admitting that, hey, I am where I am because of me. I need to turn it over. It's like admitting like I can't do this alone. I need help. And I am powerless because the decisions I've made got me to where I am today.
Mm.
And so the podcast series is how to avoid a relapse or how to avoid a slip. So that's more geared towards these are people that have already gotten past the first step. They've already admitted powerlessness, which you and I know that's the first step. And I would say environment is probably one of the biggest for me. And what I think is it's one of the biggest things is it's environment. It's the people that you surround yourself with. It's the places you go. It's like willpower doesn't work, like Ben Hardy's book. Willpower doesn't work. If you spend too much time at the barbershop, you're going to get a haircut.
Mm.
And that's true in my experience. People that want to go back and they want to go hang out at the same places that they hung out before they got clean and sober, like they're not going to stay sober. It's like window shopping.
Mm. So funny story. I used to drink at a place called On the Rocks. It was a little bar on Park Ave, Worcester. Nice little place. In the end of my drinking, I thought I was a high roller. I was drinking Grand Marnier and cranberry. And, I was, I'm sure I'll be getting judged on this, but I was doing enough cocaine so that I could keep level until even that, that failed me at some point. And cause I was angry. I would get to the certain point where I would just black out and I was a lunatic. But I always remember telling Franny, and this is how crazy this disease is. I'm sober a couple years and I'm like, man, whenever I drive by On the Rocks, I just get this feeling like this, you know what I'm talking. Anybody, if you know what I'm talking, like when Thursday comes, like I didn't drink every day, I drank the weekends, but when Thursday came, this feeling would come over me. Like I knew it was time. And as soon as I didn't even have to drink or do the drugs. As soon as I had them in my possession, the feeling would go away. Right. Mm-hmm. It's a mental disease. However, what I want to say here is I told Franny whenever, and you know what he said to me? He says, drive a different fucking route. Don't drive by On the Rocks.
Yeah. Duh.
I'm like, yeah. Don't drive by On the Rocks anymore.
Right.
Don't go down Park Ave. I'm like, no shit. It's
yeah. Wow.
That's profound.
Yeah. No, totally.
It's God. Like, I just made this an X-rated, not X-rated, but R-rated episode. So, all right, man. Well, hey, listen, I appreciate you. How do people get in touch with you, by the way? What's the best way to get? And then tell us about your social media, Kick-Ass Sober Life.
Okay, so Kick-Ass Sober Life is on TikTok and on Instagram. And then I Love Being Sober. We have a YouTube channel. We also have a podcast. We're on all the different platforms. We go on Facebook Live. David, you're going to be interviewed, I believe, next week. And so I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, me too.
And then camelbackrecovery.com is how they can find me, or they can email me, tim@camelbackrecovery.com.
And your podcast is on the normal place, iTunes.
It's on all. Yeah, it's I Love Being Sober is on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple.
Is there a website where people can go and they can subscribe?
ilovebeingsober.com. Go to ilovebeingsober.com and that'll take you to our podcast page and you'll see all the different platforms that we're on. So yes.
Well, I want to thank you for what you're doing, man. I appreciate you. Appreciate this. The first time I've had any type of, this is over 250 episodes. And this is the first time we've talked about sobriety. So that's amazing. Anything I missed, anything I should have asked that I didn't? Or anything that, I
could talk for another hour.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I think we're good. I appreciate you having me on your show. And hopefully I said something that helps someone. And anyone out there, if you need help, I am in Arizona. So feel free to reach out if there's anything I can do for you, or if you need guidance or help or direction or anything. I am in the business of helping others find recovery. So feel free to reach out. And thanks again so much, David, for having me. I appreciate it.
100%. And I would say too, to you listening, I've reach out to me as well if I can help with anything. I mean, seriously, I'm here to help too. So feel free to reach out to Tim or me. And I want to give you the final thought, Tim. So for going back, thinking about what we talked about for the last 35 minutes, what do you want people, like if somebody listened to this, what do you want them to walk away with today?
If they are struggling with an addiction, or they know of someone that's struggling with an addiction, it's take suggestions, like go and get help. Like you can't do this on your own. You need someone else to give you some guidance and some direction, and listen and take the direction. So again, whether it's going to an AA meeting or going to see a therapist or going to treatment, because life is so much better on the other side of it. And I know that if you're in the middle of an addiction, or if you have a loved one that's in the middle of an addiction, and it's so hard to see that life can be better, but I promise you that life is better on the other side.
Thank you, my friend. Perfect.